Good evening everyone. Welcome to the Prince's School, the Prince's Foundation School of Traditional Art, as is our name now. I'm really delighted to welcome Michael Schneider, who's come all the way from America for, I think, a week at least?
About a week and a half.
A week, so this is your first event, isn't it?
Correct.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And on Saturday there is a Temenos event, which is the John Michel Symposium. I'm sure everyone here knows who John Michel is, so I highly recommend it. And there are some leaflets up here if you'd like to have a look. But and Michael's speaking there, the key speaker. So I don't know Michael. It's a great privilege to meet him here now, and I've been told a lot about him by my colleagues, Simon and Lisa, who are both geometers. Sorry to say I'm not a geometer, but he's a great he has a reverence, I think, for our founder, Professor Keith Critchlow. And this is obviously very important to us because he's been key to all of the tutors here and also our students. So I'll just say a little bit of formal about his biography. Michael has been an educator for 44 years. And he writes that he delights in exploring the interactions of nature, science, mathematics, art, philosophy, and religion. And this is incredibly important in the world today, where we know about the compartmentalization of everything, in particular art and science. So I think Michael is obviously a key person in bringing these together. And in fact, I heard from my colleague that when you were 16, you looked at geometry and you thought, I've got to learn, I have to understand this and learn about it.
Absolutely right.
He then just went on and took 2 degrees in mathematics. Most of us don't have that kind of energy and initiative, but his BA or BSc is from Brooklyn, and his master's degree is from the University of Florida. I'm trying to read this without my glasses. He's also the author, I expect some of you have seen his book, I've printed a copy, of A Beginner's Guide to Constructing, let me put my glasses on. Beginner's Guide to Constructing the Universe. This is a very small picture, which I just looked at very briefly, and it looks like a really good beginner's guide. So it's me who should be looking at that. He's also written 6 accompanying Constructing the Universe activity books, workshops teaching geometric construction with compasses overlaid upon their appearances in nature, art and technology. And I can just see from this that this is where he's beginning tonight. Michael was a Fulbright Hays Scholar in India in 1977. Very interesting, he studied ancient mathematics and sciences and has worked on special projects at the New York Academy of Sciences. He's also held workshops for educators at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, including Science in the Art Museum, as a title as one, The Mathematics of Islamic Art, very interesting, and Showing Children Harmony. All beautiful titles, I have to say, Michael. And in 1993, he designed the geometry harmonizing the statues on the south side of the Portal of Paradise at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine in New York City. So maybe some of you have seen that. Have you seen that, Lisa? Because Lisa's our colleague from America. No. I mean, maybe you'll show us some slides. And for 17 years until recently, Michael taught this use of mathematics to art students at the California College of the Arts in San Francisco. And just listening to something just before, Michael, it was very beautiful. You were talking about how the structure of numbers can be seen in the structure of creation. And you looked at the 2 words, matter and pattern. And interestingly, when students come and do the MA course, they have to look at the definition of words. And one of our words is pattern. And of course, pattern, as we know, comes from patron and pater, father. And matter, as you pointed out, comes from mother. So matter and pattern, the mother and father, really of creation, you could say. So on that note, I won't talk about what you're going to talk about because you're going to talk about it. So please welcome Michael. just a changeover. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Emma, for that very kind introduction and the school's generous offer to have me come and speak today. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. I first visited the Prince's School in the late 1980s. That's possible, isn't it? Yes. Whenever I'd come to London to visit John Michel, he and I would take a stroll over here just to see what's going on. And I'd never seen anything like this. And every time I'd come to visit him, a few times in the 90s and the early 2000s, we'd stroll over here and marvel at the work that's being done by the instructors, the tutors, and the students. And I can't think of any place that's more advanced in this study on the planet that I know of. Maybe you do, but I certainly don't. And I thought, what can I possibly teach here? You know all of the geometric constructions, their divisions and subdivisions and expansions and uses. And I just read the Arts and Crafts of the Islamic World. And that first section on geometry, wow, what revelation. The details, I pored over every image with awe, how this was worked out. Just so impressed. So I thought, what can I teach here? You know all the constructions, etc. So I thought I would share with you geometric analyses that I have made, my, quote, discoveries, in art and architecture, mostly art, for around the world and over many centuries. There are particular applications of polygons, especially in the tondo type of form, the round circular form, which lends itself to different polygons. So I thought I'd share with you my findings of how these have been used. Right? Well, just a few definitions. Geometry, of course, numbers represented as space. Right? And the word polygon itself, literally many knees. The Greek term for what we call an angle, they called knee. You know, I just love how the Greeks and others used parts of the human body to associate with parts of, let's say, pottery. There's the mouth, the lip, the neck, the shoulder, the body, the belly, the foot. I like that the Greeks and others humanized it like that. And by the way, if you'd like to take any photographs, feel free. Just no flash, of course. Knees, gonia, okay, angles. And these are some of the polygons we'll look at, plus 12 as well. Now, each regular polygon, and by regular, of course, I mean equal length sides, equal angles, and so forth. Each regular polygon describes a different proportioning system, logically, and also, interestingly, a different symbol system. It's number symbolism around the world. Not exactly identical in all places, but there are great similarities. For example, the number 7 or the other ones. And you can see that each of these, the 3, the 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, you can see there are different proportioning systems at work here. And these different proportioning systems, for example, I indicated here concentric circles that derive directly from each of these polygonal constructions. There's either a circle inscribed within a polygon or circumscribed around one, or at the intersections of lines. And you can also see that they each have a different feel to them. If you spend a little time dwelling with them, you see a little feel going on. Each is different. And so I'll show you how I have found that many of these have been used. All right, of course, our friend Plato, the good, of course, is always beautiful, and the beautiful never lacks proportion. Well, I second that. So let's start off with the 3 and the 6, which are related by the square root of 3 proportion. All right? Well, we can go back to Egypt. I mean, this knowledge is at least 50 centuries old, if not more. So we'll start with the 50. A statue of the pharaoh Amenemhat III, 1860-ish, 1814 BC, 12th dynasty. What I'm interested in here is this headdress. It's called the Nemus Headdress, and it's very common. But you have to look closely because there are 2 or 3 varieties of them. The angles are slightly different on them. This one I'm choosing for the triangular nature of it. And I think you'd agree that the edges of it align with this. I didn't fudge it. There are no big gaps and so forth. And the symbolism is really the same kind of symbolism you see in other religions with a triangle. It represents a divinity, an accomplished being. And that's how they must have thought that about Amenemhat III. Of course, it's rare to get the triangular Nemes headdress. We'll see the other version when we get to the number 5, which is way more common. But the triangular nature is a symbol of divinity and spiritual attainment. All right. Well, a Greek drinking bowl, kylix or kylix. You drank from this, and when you reach the bottom, you got a picture to look at. And by that time, you're all jovial and have lots of discussion about these. But you'll notice that we have 3 concentric circles, essentially. Or you can count 4 to the rim, but there's 1 there, 1 there, 1 there, and they're all related. It's almost impossible to find art from the ancient world that is not done with intentional, harmonious proportion. So we'll start off simply in this one. Ta-da! Just a simple, go to the edge. Now down here I might add this little gap is there, but it's not up there. It's very difficult to get a photograph precisely over the center. So they're a little bit low or a little bit high or a little left or a little right, but I tried to even it out. So that's why there's a little gap here and there, because it's not quite over the center. But I think you'll agree that the triangle is what generally is applied to that, the overall spacing. Well, we'll see in a moment. Here we have Chartres, North Rose Window, circa 1233, gift of Blanche of Castile, Queen of France. And let's see what we have here. Well, taking a hint from John Michel, who wrote, the underlying geometry of the northern rose window at Chartres extends beyond the window itself as a 12-fold scheme. Well, let's take a look at that 12-fold scheme. All right? It'll work out something like this. All right? And so the relationship of the entire circle to the window itself, again, is a symbol of divinity, the threefold nature, okay? And the 12 is the inner organization. All right, so just looking at a few of these overall angles. What we're really seeing here is harmony made visible through geometry. For example, if I take a circle inscribed around a triangle and inscribed within, there's a natural mathematical whole number relationship. If the inner area has is 1 unit of area, the ring around the hole is 3 times that, precisely, mathematically speaking. And in fact, these smaller areas, for example, these curved triangles around the circle, these little inner areas, are equal to 1/3, each 1/3 of that 1, and so these 3 together would equal that whole inner area. And these are 2/3, 2/3, 2/3 relationship as well. And so if you want to think of it as a music visualized, the whole area is 3 plus 1 was 4. And so the relationship of the ring to the area of the green ring to the whole, it would correspond to the musical relationship of the musical fourth, 3/4. So we're seeing music, and I think the assumption in the ancient world was if it sounds beautiful and we can see those proportions geometrically, it'll feel beautiful as well. And I think they were onto something, certainly. All right. The painting at the bottom of one of the Greek drinking bowls, we have a fellow here who's playing his lyre, and he looks like he's singing and semi-ecstatic. And let's take a look at this. All right, got a triangle there. What's interesting here is how it skims by the lyre and comes down to the base of his bed. But this is very, very interesting to me, how the bed goes up just a little bit. If you look at, for example, ancient Egyptian art, where there are deities, especially in the Old Kingdom, the geometry is very, very fixed. When you're looking into the land of the gods, very fixed geometry, and the gods align perfectly with the geometry, no deviation from the line. With the Greeks, they developed an aesthetic notion, which I've seen, I'm learning and seeing elsewhere. If you deviate from the line, it gives a feeling of motion. So it's almost as if he's leaning upward in his song, and the bed is going up as well. And so it's a very slight psychological feel we get from that little bit there. So it's always good to look for little deviations from the geometry, giving that sense of motion. So what else do we have in this little part of it? We have his knee, the line going right by his knee and where it touches the lyre and so forth. All right, let's look a little more. I put a hexagon and completed the hexagram. And you notice the hexagon, the line of the hexagon up here, runs parallel with the top of the lyre. Let's see, the toga he's wearing, you see, runs slightly there along that line, and his back is generally along this line, as with the pillow. And whenever you see an elbow, we'll see more of these, wherever you see an elbow, it's generally resting on a line, an invisible line. So it gives we get a feeling of stability without having to see the line. I think we can feel the geometry more than we realize. All right, different in the hexagonal root 3 proportioning. What happens is we have these rectangles. There's a big rectangle there, and then with another hexagram, it divides that rectangle into 3 equal parts, and another hexagram divides that into 3 equal parts. Each one of these, the green, the small greens, the blue, the white, these greens, that blue, the big green, they're all the same proportion, square root of 3 to 1 on the long side to the short. But it repeats itself over and over again. It's the same but different. Oh, I love the Egyptian work. The Egyptians are, I must say, are my favorite for their precision. For example, here we have the pictorial of Princess Sithat-Unet. It's located in the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City. I've seen this. It's rather small. It's only, let's say, 3 1/4 inches across the bottom. It's rather small, and the back is all nicely gold. And it's gold, carnelian, feldspar, garnet, turquoise. Great work there. It's a message. These are hieroglyphs, and it says something. What it says is, the god of the rising sun grants life and dominion over all that the sun encircles for 1,100,000 years. To King Khepere, also known as Senwosret III. All right, we'll take a further look at this. Oh, we've got a circle with a triangle inscribed. Look at that precision. After 4,000 years, it's still a virtually perfect fit in the way that the lines skim right by the parts there. Well, let's complete the hexagram. Oh, I don't know if that shows us anything much. We have the front of the Shen symbol, the symbol of eternity that the falcons are standing on. It touches the edge of that. That's nice. What else can we do? Well, let's apply another hexagram. What is that showing us? Oh, let's show the fronts of the hawks, where their body goes, and the edge of the Ankh symbol, right there, touches right to the edge of the Ankh symbol. It bounds it. And another hexagram within it, continuing the square root of 3 proportion. Oh, I see. We see how the line comes right to the rising sun there, and the cross right at the center of the Ankh, and it bounds the top of the ankh. So we have the ankh bound on top and the sides right now. And then maybe a little bit more. It's always significant that the crown is cut. That seems to exist in the Egyptian, Greek, and others. And there's more in that. So let's take another hexagram. And ta-da! Gives us precisely the width of the cartouche. Let's see what else. And it also bounds the other side of the ankh. So now the ankh is bound on 3 sides. And let's see. I could make one more hexagram, but I'll just draw one line from it. And you can see it crosses right at the bottom of the cartouche. There. So this is how they kept the square root of 3 proportioning in particular work. Let's see. Okay, let's go to China. Chinese bai, or pi, it's called disc. It's a sky symbol. It was often placed on the body of the dead and used in funerary ceremonies. The sky symbol guided the dead to the afterworld from Neolithic times onward. You would look, the living would look at the North Star through that hole. Okay, that was part of it. Now, we have 4 concentric circles. The outer one, next one, next one, and next one. And of course, they are related in harmonious proportion. We have here the first hexagram that relates the whole outer to the next here. And another hexagram within that gives us the next circle. And a final hexagram gives us the final circle. So they're maintaining the square root of 3 proportioning throughout, which is important to them symbolically for whatever reason. And we'll see others that use different geometries for these discs. All right. Some heraldry. Okay. Is the lion simply floating? Well, like the elbow, you'll see it resting on a line, and that gives us a feeling of stability without really seeing the geometry. So let's put a circle around this, and we got our general area here, the general leaning of the animals and so forth. Well, let's take one more. There it is. See, there's the line it's resting on. Okay, so we got a feel for that. And we'll do another one. And it gives the width of the shield. And by the way, you'll notice it was drawn a little incorrectly, I think unintentionally on this side. That one's fine. And also shows where the point goes to. Okay, so if you're into heraldry. And then one more line of the next hexagram gives us that division. Okay, so you really know that this is intentional. It's too good to be true. All right. Rims. Now, looking at the rim around the black circle, these 3 rims have something in common. And it's not the count of these little cross areas. This one, they're even unevenly spaced. Small gap, big gap, and so on. It's not the number of them or the spacing, but it's the geometry that relates the outer to the inscribed circle there. So these are related by the hexagon. Hexagon geometry also maintains this visual whole number harmony. In other words, it's a 3 to 1. 3 of those green rims would fill this white center. So again, we're seeing harmony made visible through geometry. All right, so we have a fellow here in one of those Greek bowls. He's running. And the rim is one of these hexagonal spaced rims. But the inside, we're moving away from the 3 now, and we're going to 4. And you can see that shows by the angles of his legs running here, you see. So we're moving into that. What the symbolism is, I really couldn't say at this point. And another square inscribed in that, gives us something of the general, slightly of the angle of the arm, cuts at the head, separates the head from the body, and so forth. So let's move into this, number 4, the square, which of course is square root of 2 proportioning. All right, we have here a bowl. Now, I think this person was a wealthy landowner. And you'll notice there's an outer rim, there's like the inner rim here, and a couple of inscribed lines, and then a circle of his portrait. So I've inscribed a square there, and it pretty much corresponds with slightly within one of the inner lines, at least over there, and over here I think it's more exact. So this picture was taken on a slightly aside. But let's do one more inscribed square, and ta-da, we see why the circle is that size. Okay, maintaining the harmony of the part to the whole. Now we're in the fours. All right, what do we have here? Do I have did I put a rim around this? Yeah, there's a rim here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 again. Okay, it's a 6. They're using the 6 here. But if you need clues to what geometry is within here, look for dominant angles. And you can see a real nice right angle here. So it turns out, no coincidence, when you inscribe a square within that circle, boom. I mean, the precision is pretty good on this one. And we'll take it a little further. And, you know, if you're a person who creates art and would like to create the impression of harmony, you might enjoy these images I'm showing you because they'll give you hints about how to use these lines. You can see the crown. This line cuts right through the laurel wreath there and the helmet that he's creating. Let's see, what else do we have on this? Let's see, let's go a little more, another one. You can see how the back of his back, upper back and head and neck and so forth. His arm moves along this line and so forth. The center of the body, you know, and these other areas can be divided as well to get more detail. But the idea basically is when you're composing using this geometry, these lines can be used as guidelines. They're not rigidly strict, but it gives you suggestions. You know, if you need to lean an arm, it can do this one, it could do that one, it could do that one, and they'll maintain the harmony at any one of those. So, all right, in the Sri Yantra diagram, there's a big square and a circle and lotus leaves and a circle here with the famous Sri Yantra diagram. Well, we'll start off with a square and get that, and you'll notice there are here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 leaves there. So that sort of helps confirm that. So we'll go one more in here, and you see that this circle separates the outer leaves from the inner leaves. And we go one more, and that shows us our Sri Yantra diagram circle. Okay, so maintaining harmony. Harmony is the whole thing, because if you have harmony outside of you and what you're looking at, you have better chance to maintain harmony within. And I think that's part of why these diagrams maintain that. And also with these 8 leaves, you see one on the bottom, one to each corner of the square, and all around. All right. What's interesting, one of the interesting aspects about a square, which relates a circle inscribed within and circumscribed without, is that it's the area of the white circle within precisely, mathematically, equals the area of the yellow ring around it. It's a form of balance, okay? And so we can think of it as a musical relationship. The whole area is 2, and the relationship to any one of those is 2 to 1, musical octave, okay, in terms of vibration. So it's a way to balance, make a visual balance without it being really obvious, like dividing it down the middle or anything like that. So examples of that, we have here a Greek plate does that relationship, French, Saint-Denis, right here, and local English Wedgwood is using this sort of design. And I'll bet if you check in your kitchen and you look at your dinner plates, I'll bet you'll find this still. I have found it. So I'll bet you still find it, because it must be a long-standing tradition that's still passed down. It's just so nice. I guess what it means is, if all the food on your plate is pushed off to the edge, for whatever reason, it'll still fit. without going over the edge. So if you have little children, these are the plates to use if they're pushing their food around. Here we're looking upward at a Byzantine dome. And there are 8 angels, and that gives us the clue that it's going to be the square root of 2 geometry. And we have lots of concentric circles here. So let's see what we have here. Okay, there's a square around the hole, and we can see, oh, the Christ's beard is tucked right into that little curve there, and his fingers fall along that, and the book nicely falls there. All right, well, let's put a square in that. And what this is showing us is that the area of the ring of angels precisely equals the area of everything within it. So it's a statement about balance between the angelic world and everything contained within it. It's giving a sense of equality. Well, let's take another one. All right, what this shows us is that the area of the ring between the yellow circles, which includes the brown, the white, the brown, and the text, that ring area is precisely equal to the area containing the Christ. So they're maintaining a feeling of harmony. You look up, you see the angels, you see Christos, and you maintain a feeling of harmony. I guarantee if something was moved away from this geometry, even slightly, you would feel it. You would feel the difference. And there's more that could be analyzed in this. Could go further and find out why his eyes are where they are, and more. But I just wanted to use this as an example to show you the equal areas in the ring separated by the square. All right, let's move up to the square root of 5 and the golden ratio proportioning. Wowie, a lot in this. Is it traditional to have a break at some halfway point? No. Okay, good. They say the head can only take in as much as the seat can endure. So if you need to stand up later or any point, feel free. It's perfectly fine. The famous King Tut Nemus Headdress. Okay. Now this photograph was taken off a little bit to the right, so the match won't be quite precise, but I think you can see that the angles will be perfectly fine. Here what I've done is inscribed a pentagon, downward pointing pentagon, around a circle containing the whole seam. And you see how it comes down to near the base of the beard and his chin and so forth. And another pentagon inscribed, a pentagram inscribed within this pentagon, places the nose at the precise center. And that's part of the Egyptian symbolism of the idea of the breath of life. Okay? Maybe you know the opening of the mouth ceremony in Egyptian art and the process. The priest puts an oddly shaped stick up to the initiate's nose to breathe, to give him the breath of life. And interestingly enough, that oddly shaped stick, which I don't have depicted here, at the very end is a piece of meteoric iron. That's the only way that the Egyptians got their iron. There was no mining, they didn't import it. They only got their iron from meteors that fell from the heavens, and that's why it was considered part of the sacred ceremony. But the idea is the breath of life, and you can see, this cross at the lips, and basically the edge of the head through the ears and so forth. This is called a commemorative foundation brick. When new temples were built and initiated and so forth, they had special bricks that were inserted into the building, and I guess this one is a commemorative one to remind whomever about it. And it's a portion of a circle. Well, what does that circle have to do with anything? Well, it's as close as I can get to the circle itself. I guess they had a little problem in the kiln there, or it was rubbed down or something. But what geometry explains this line? Ta-da! It's pentagonal. We'll see another commemorative brick that uses another geometry as well here. And now, what I think, this is where I think the cartouche was meant to be precisely within. Okay, if this was really Old Kingdom, the first few dynasties, oh, they wouldn't deviate at all. They were laser perfect for the most part. But it's a geometry. Symbolism for 5, of course, has to do with life, living. You know, the 5 of the hand, the 5-petaled flowers, and the appearance of the golden ratio in living forms. Here's the golden ratio. Here's a golden rectangle. And through the face, and so on and so forth. But symbolism of 5 is about life. All right? Here's a nice piece. It's a talisman, pretty late, 800 BC, the 3rd intermediate period, which are sort of unstable periods in Egyptian history. But what we have here is, well, you can see this is not a true circle. See, it's squashed. It's a little squash. Can you see that? See when this circle comes down here, it comes across here, or this one even. It's a little squash top to bottom. And that's, of course, intentional, because if you look at the sun near the horizon, whether it's rising or setting, the sun looks a little squashed in the same way. And that's part of the symbolism, either rising sun or setting sun. In this case, it's rising sun. Because we have a child here. We know by this side lock on the head and the finger up to the mouth. Some people think it means he's putting his finger in his mouth to suck on it, but I think it's more of like, shh, don't speak of the mysteries, just experience them. So he's there, he's sitting on the lotus. This near circle and this bottom is a hieroglyph known as Shen, which symbolizes eternity, to use modern language. So the whole is a scene of eternity. And he's the child Horus, the newborn. Some liken him to the child Christ. But let's see what we have here. Here's where the true circle is. It goes to the very bottom of the Shen symbol. All right? And, well, where can we find our 5-ness? Well, let's put that circle there. We inscribe the Pentagon in that circle, and it shows you the relationship between the outer circle and the inner circle of the scene. All right? Well, there's a lot we can look at this. I mean, there's the angles of the hawks and so on. I'm not going to go too far into that, but what I'll do is show you if I connect this part, it's sort of partly making the next pentagram. It shows you that it's where he's sitting, the line he's sitting on, separating him from the lotus. So that's how this maintains harmony. What about the base of the lotus? What about the base of the lotus? Well, if you go halfway down this edge of the pentagon and connect half the midpoints, it shows you where that would be. So this is how the Egyptians would approach this sort of thing. Maintain harmony always. And there's more that can be done, and you can find this online. Broad collar of faience beads. They're made of quartzite. Akhenaten, whose name, of course, means effective spirit of the Aten, 18th dynasty, in those years. You'll notice that in this, there are longer white beads and shorter red, and green, and even shorter, perhaps, these inner ones. Now, if we can assume that the Egyptians are maintaining harmony here, how do they do it? Well, since we're on the number 5, let's put a circle around the hole and put a pentagram in there. And you can see the crossings of the pentagram imply this blue circle, which shows the relationship now between the outer and the inner. Now, by the way, I might add that the 5-pointed star in a circle, or a circle with a center and 5 rays, any type, different depictions of the 5, is a very, very important Egyptian glyph. Signifies the duat, spelled in English D-U-A-T, which is translated as underworld. When you see the scenes of the deities going into the underworld or the initiates going to the underworld, they're in the duat. And that's a whole discussion of itself. Is it afterlife, or is the duat the Maya, so to speak, that we're experiencing here, or something else. All right. Well, anyway, that's the relationship of the outer and inner circles. What about those white beads, those long white beads? Well, a simple pentagon inscribed in the outer circle, containing an inscribed blue circle, shows us how they got the length of the outer beads. Well, what about all the other beads? Well, to find that, we have to construct two pentagrams that naturally occur here, and they will explain all the rest. And that's here. Here's an upper one, big in white, and here's a lower one here. And their crossings and endpoints show us the circles of the beads here. So we have here, there's no crossing, nothing on it that we can see in here unless I subdivided this a little further. But you can see it up here for that point, and then these points give us a circle around the yellow, and then this crossing gives us the circle between the red and the green. So this is how they did these to maintain harmony, the visual harmony and symbolism of the duat. Okay, these are scenes inside the Greek drinking bowls. Now what I want you to notice here are the different ground lines. And I put them in a kind of an order from higher to lower to lower to lower to lowest. Okay, now what you might not realize why they did that. People think generally, oh, the artist did it by his feelings. It feels right to put a line right there. Oh, you'd be thrown off a cliff in Greece if you did anything like that. They wouldn't allow that. It had to be written in the divine, designed in the divine language. And what is it about these ground lines? Each of them is described, defined by a different polygon. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And here with the Greek Sphinx, you can see here, 7's appropriate. 7's the number of mystery around the world pretty much. So somehow we get the feeling of the right association for that. Now why these other ones are as they are, I'm not sure. Here the square, we have Demeter. You can tell by her, the staff she holds, which runs right along this line, or she's pushing it slightly that way. And if we quartered the circle, you'd see that it would fall right on that line. Here with the 5, something about life runs right along there. And we could, go further and further in these to find out why the rest of it is where it is. Why are the wings on that angle? Why does that come up to there? I mean, it's all easily doable. But today I'm just going to give you a general feel for these. So we have here, an Amorous scene. Excuse us. What do we find here? All right, well, the two circles relate in the 6, or you could think of it as 3 just as well. And let's see what we can find here. The ground line will give us the clue, because if the ground line doesn't work, no other geometry is going to work for it. And the ground line, of course, is going to be the 5. And we see a little bit about the 5 with the pentagon with the line there and the top of their heads. And let's see, a pentagram within there. Let's see, what does that show us? Anything of interest? Oh, well, of course, the feet are going to be there anyway. Her neck right there. This enclosure encloses both of their heads. And I thought I'd explore a little bit with the seat. You'll notice the seat is tilted. So she sort of has to lean up and forward a little bit for the seat to go back like that. Why is the seat right there? Well, I'm not positive, but I think it's because of this. If you inscribe the little, construct a little pentagon right there, it shows us basically the top, the line that she's sitting on, essentially. Now, I was wondering about all this. I said, did the Greeks really do this, or am I making this up and fudging it somehow? So I thought I'd make a timeline of Greek pottery types. Okay, the timeline, the general eras, the geometric, archaic, the classic, and the Hellenistic. All right, and we have here the geometric pottery, let's see, the Proto-Corinthian, the Proto-Attic, Corinthian, oh, how beautiful that is, and the black figure and the red figure, and these are the years essentially that they endured. So I thought, when did the great geometers live, the great Greek geometers? Could they have been an influence on this? So I put them in here as well. Down there, and yeah, Corinthian, black figure, red figure, we got Thales of Miletus, Pythagoras, Zeno of Elea, Hippocrates of Chios, Archytas, Plato, Eudoxus. I would think that they could have had great influence on the design of pottery. Now, maybe you know the works of Caskey from the Boston Museum, or J. Hambidge. You can get books on, geometry of Greek pottery. And so here's an analysis based on 6 squared of 2 rectangles. That's in one of the books. And, it gives you the idea of where everything, how things are laid out, their widths and so forth. And there are hundreds of examples of these in those books. And so I thought, well, if they're designing the sides of those, why wouldn't they be designing other aspects of the pottery as well? So I'm convinced that the great geometers of those times had great influence on the pottery designs themselves, and that explains some of the perfect geometry. All right, so we have a fellow here shooting with his bow. The clues to the geometry will very often be in the feet, the placement of the feet, not to mention the arm. So let's put a pentagon and pentagram there, and you can see his foot is placed right at the corner of the pentagon, pentagram, and his arm runs along this line, and even the 2 parts of the bow run back along the lines of the pentagram. All right, he's doing something, an enjoyment of life. Excuse us. Again, I think it's a fellow taking a bath, and he's bent over. I guess he's washing his knees. And we have an outer circle there. We got this big mug of a bathtub. Let's put in Pentagon, and you can see his back and his head are bounded by the pentagon itself. And if we connect the line of the corners of the pentagon, or a pentagram itself, we see how this line defines the neck and the shoulder of the bowl. And let us see what else we can get out of this. Oh, the line there, we see generally his arm falls around that. We're not looking for the perfect precision, but just the feeling of moving along with the harmony. Demeter, Demetros, okay. And here she is, I guess it's making a kind of a ritual. But I looked at this spelling of her name there. It seems a little sloppy at first. Very often they'll go along the circular rim, or they'll go down in a straight line, but at first glance it seems sloppy. Let's take a look. No, it's starting at the top, and the artist moved it over, the craftsperson moved it over to run right along the side of the pentagon. And the crown is cut, the crown of the head is separation, maybe the crown chakra. And let's see what else we can find here. Oh, the top of the column is defined by this line here. And you can see her arm, the offering is resting on this line as well. So it's something to do with life. And the idea of Demeter associated with life and with the golden ratio, the golden section. The plant world is completely imbued with golden ratio, Fibonacci numbers, golden section, all over the place. I mean, it's really a definition of the plant world. So that's very appropriate for Demeter. Oh, and the line across there, her elbows resting on it. Right? All right, we have a fellow running here. There's a stick. I think these items in his hand were weights. They sometimes ran with weights. I don't think it's the scraper that they put oil on their body and then scrape off all the oil and dirt. I think these are running weights. And of great interest is this stick that's running up there. So let's see what we can find here. All right. Well, we have a seven-sided, a heptagon defining the width of the rim containing circle. That's interesting. 7. There's something sacred about this. And let's see what we have here. Well, if I put a pentagon facing downward, oh, we see the crown of his head, even though his head is turned, it's there, and the top of the stick is there, and the edges of this is maybe, maybe not. But that stick, boom, right along the edge of a pentagram, okay? So that, for me, confirms something about this. And I could have also flipped that whole pentagon, and it would have shown me something else as well, which would indicate that it has to do with a 10-sided figure. But I don't have that on this one. But I will on this one. It's another gentleman with a couple of animals. What's interesting here for us are those sticks. And I'll want you eventually to watch this one that ends up there on the left. Let's see, we have a hexagonal rim. And within that circle, we inscribe a pentagon. Well, it shows us a little bit, not that much. It does show us the heel of his foot. That's a good clue there. And the edge of his head is cut right there. And if I put a pentagon in there, yeah, it shows us a few things. You know, where his wrist is defined, and maybe this is running along it, and maybe something with this animal and so on. But if I flip this, notice now it runs along that stick perfectly. You don't even see the stick anymore. And this line, his arm is running along and parallel. And because there's a little gap there, it's almost as if he's lifting his arm and reaching. And, you know, the gist of the body and so forth. So I think this is how this was designed. Here we have basically what we would call today a water canteen. You know, you go on a journey, you need to bring a little water with you. Water is definitely about life. So we have here a brown ring, a light brown ring, a brown circle. They must be related. Okay? And they're related by a pentagon, at least the rim and the the large brown circle. But one more there gives us that inner circle itself. So if you're designing something that's useful for life, pentagon, pentagram, fivefold, symmetry, golden ratio is perfect. And we can see something similar. We'll go over to Central America. The Mayan Maze, it's known as the Maze King plate. And it's held this way with him leaning forward like that. So let's take a look. We have an outer light ring, an orange ring, inner circle, and we have him tilted there. Well, it's the pentagon relating the outer, and the inscribed blue circle relates that outer light-colored ring. And what gives us that next one? Well, we'll have to make a pentagram in there. And that shows us a few things. But what I have to do is make another little pentagram there. And it takes the crossings of that pentagram to give us the width of that orange circle. And if I take it a little further inward there, we can see a little bit more. His body is leaning on that line. And it comes back to the knot there, and you see the leaningness of his body. Right? Beautiful piece. I could not find a source for this, so if anybody knows what this is, I mean, my guess would be the 5 pillars of Islam, but I don't know. If anybody could read this or tell me what it is, or Where it's from, I searched and searched. I couldn't find a label for it. But it's really quite beautiful. And if we count, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So this is going to certainly be 5, 10 geometry. So let's see. We're going to try to understand the whole, which I think is pretty clear. You can see it's pretty pentagonal. But we also want to know these small circles. Well, and the large circle, of course, why is it that size? Why are these that size? And why is this gold circle where it is? Because it doesn't go through the centers of these small circles. That would be more understandable. Let's take a look. So first I put a pentagon around there, and it fits pretty nicely. And then I reversed it. So we have 10. So this has something to do with 10. And now we see each of these extensions are come to a point. And a pentagram within there, defines this center circle. All right. What about those other circles? Well, I inscribed a little red pentagon where they naturally occur, the only places they can occur like that in that geometry, and they encircle it very nicely. See? Very nice there. Okay, now the last part is this gold circle. How does that come about? Well, I put a green pentagrams there, and the circle comes about by just skimming or inscribed by a kind of a figure that would be right there. So we see this beautiful piece is inscribed with the harmony of life, is what we're looking at. Just beautifully maintained, telling us something about life and living. All right. You may have seen this if you came in here, the Alba Madonna Raphael. He did many of these round tondos, and you can apply this same geometry to many of them. So I learned this, by the way, from a book called The Painter's Secret Geometry by Charles Boulot. I recommend it. Many of his pictures have way more lines than I would recommend. There are lines all over the place. But if you simplify what he's doing, you can see here the horizon line there, the leg of the infant Jesus. He was having a play date with his friend John the Baptist. The leg of Mary resting right there in that little bit. We can go further with that. Her hand rests on the line and so forth. Now, this is not ancient, not traditional, but I included it anyway because it relates to the previous illustration. Salvador Dali, Leda Atomica, 1949, his wife Gala there, and who knows what symbolism. Well, the geometry that defines this is exactly the same as the one we just saw. This is a picture I scanned from his book, 50 Secrets of Magic Craftsmanship. If you don't know that book, it is a hoot. I don't know if that's an Americanism, but it's amazing. You know, chapters are like, how to find your true love using an olive. And you go, look, what is he crazy? And you read it, and by the time you read these, you go, you know, that might work. He has one, how to paint a landscape. He says, if you want to paint a landscape, don't look at the landscape. Get a piece of wood, get a willow branch, and turn it into a circle and mount it on the wood. Then find a bunch of dead flies and sprinkle the dead flies on the wood. Oh no, he's off his rocker now. He says, soon some spiders will come and eat the flies and build a beautiful web in your circle. When the web is really full, then take it and look at your landscape through that web, and you will see the light break up in ways that you wouldn't have noticed before. So another one of these crazy things, how to paint a landscape, with dead flies. You go, what? But by the time you read it, you go, that's not too bad. Anyway, you can see how her leg fits in so nicely in there, just like we saw the Alba Madonna. There's more in the horizon line and so on and so forth. It can be further analyzed. And you might look down here, and that is actually a formula for the golden ratio. Now, how did he know about this? Maybe you know the name Matilagika. Matilagika was Dali's geometry tutor. Yeah, how do you like that? Who wrote The Golden Number, Le Number d'Or, The Geometry of Art and Life, and many other books. And we'll end the entire show with a quote from him. But I want to include this to show you that that tradition is somehow being continued, at least until then. All right, let's take a look at number 7, geometry. Okay, Hopi. This is not that old, but it's based upon the ancient Hopi traditions. Still very spiritual people, very isolated. They live on a plateau, on a mesa in the Four Corners area of the Southwest. And if we look, we can see obviously 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This has something to do with 7. So let's try the geometry of the 7. And yes, a red heptagon, or heptagram, I should say, pretty closely, encloses. The photo may be off, or the painting, the drawing may be a little off, and it may be intentional. But it relates the whole with the rim there. And if we go a little further, we can see that the next heptagram shows us the size of the hole in the bowl. Okay, so they're maintaining the harmony there. This is another one of these Chinese bai or pi. You can find it on both names disc. You know, the one that they use in funerary ceremonies and look at the North Star through the hole. You can see here that there's different rings. There's a ring here, and then there's an inner ring of dots and an inner circle. And true to the Chinese and others, a heptagram inscribed in that outer circle contains a circle which gives us the next inner circle there. And one more heptagon from those same corners, the other variation of the heptagon, shows us the size of the inner hole. Now, why they would choose the geometry of 6 for one and 7 for another, I don't know. But I think it's pretty clear that this is how they did it. All right, back to our friends, the Egyptians. Let's see here. This is called the Egyptian patera, which is a libation bowl for pouring offerings. It's called the patera of the swimmers. And I guess that's how these gold figures are interpreted, as somehow swimming around. But what we have here is a rim. Let's see, and we have this dark area, which is deeper in. We have this silvery area. We have this hieroglyphic text here, gold area, and another circle here, and then an inner circle there. Let's see what does it. Okay, first a heptagon creates a circle that separates this ring, this dark ring, from the silver and runs right along the bottom of the hieroglyphs. Okay, another heptagram defines the area of the gold. Another heptagram, the other variety of heptagram, defines the area of this, the outer ring of this area. And what is it that would define this inner darker area? Well, you don't have to guess. There it is, another heptagram. So they're maintaining the number, the feel, the symbolism of 7 for whatever reason. This is from the 21st dynasty. Gold and silver, diameter is 18.2 centimeters, which I'm sure is a whole unit of one of their linear measures. All right, here's another one of those commemorative foundation bricks. And this one, I put a circle around that. And this one is defined by the geometry of a heptagram. See? Why they would do this one for that and 5 for the other, I really don't know. I'm sure it's dealing with the symbolism. Right. Rooster in a circle in a Greek drinking bowl. What does it? Well, it's where the crossings of this particular heptagram occur that give us the circle around the rooster. Okay, let's see if we can coordinate the area of the whole bowl with the size of the circle, so forth. And by the way, it's not easy to stand like that for very long, so you can know he's resting on a line somewhere. All right, so basically a heptagram relates the outer and the next circle, concentric circle, and it's a, let's see, hexagonal related ring, but within that, we draw these lines, just a few of the lines, and you can see this one really defines the edge of his body and so forth. This one defines the angle of the edge of the lyre, and this one, I may be off just a little bit somehow on all this, but I think his foot is meant to either be there or perhaps where it is. So whenever you see elbows resting or legs sticking up, things like that, or something like that, there's an invisible line that we don't see but we can feel. All right. Here we have a painting inspired by Hildegard of Bingen. Perhaps you know her, very interesting biography. In fact, she's painted right in here. See, she's seated here having a vision. She's known as having visions, and then what she did, she didn't paint these. She went over to the monk in the monastery who would do the paintings. She would describe her visions, and he did the paintings. But here's her having a vision. I love this part, the divine finger out, at the edge of the frame. Okay, so what we have here is Adam Kadmon from the Kabbalah, known as primal man, heavenly man, and we have a human in here, and we have one with a red body and a divinity coming out from above. Well, what is it that relates these circles and including the central one? Well, a heptagon relates the red, separates the red from the blue. Let's see what else we can get here. Another heptagram encloses the human being. And going inward, what explains what's going on in the white? Well, it's not going to be a 7 related. The human is related to 5. So we put a pentagram in there. It shows where his hands come to, and it also perfectly defines that circle. And the symbolism, well, 7 surrounds 5. Mystery surrounds life, or mystery links heavenly and earthly life, are ways to interpret this. And there may be more. All right. We have got 2 numbers left, 8 and 12. So let's see how we do with that. Square root of 2 proportioning in this. Well, I think everybody knows the Hindu and the Tibetan Buddhist mandalas are very geometrically defined. I don't know if it must be going on around here, but the Tibetan community in India sends groups of young people around. I know for the United States, they spend 2 years traveling from city to city, and they stay like a week or 2 weeks in every city, and they have a public performance of mandala design, sand painting, basically. They have a big table, and it's 8-sided, and they do the geometry. They snap the chords and mix the chalk lines, and they do very carefully the sand in all the areas, and you can sit there and watch these guys with great patience. And then in the evenings, they put on dance and other performances, chanting and so on. Perhaps they do it here in Europe. I don't know. I would suspect so. I don't see why they wouldn't. So keep an eye out for them. If you look up the word mandala, it usually says a circular, image, But the actual etymology is even more interesting. Manda, mind. La, container. A mandala is a mind container. Okay? So let's look at our mind container, the Bodhisattva Bodhisattva Vajrapani, he who holds the thunderbolt scepter. He was a protector and guide of Gautama Buddha. This is from the 15th century in central Tibet. We definitely have a square there and a circle inscribed within that square gives us this is an outer protective fire. This multicolored is a fire that protects what's within from without. And I just connected 8 there and another 4. Well, that maybe show us something or not. Let's go a little further. Okay, connecting those parts right there gives us that inner square. And we can go a little further, say, gee, we missed that big obvious circle. Well, we'll come back to that. And one more inscribed square encloses the deity dancing. Now, I can assure you that every aspect, every element of this image is very, very carefully aligned to geometry. It would be absurd, it would be sacrilegious, blasphemous to do it otherwise. So, what would explain this black circle? We seem to have missed it. Not really. If we make connections, we connect the corner there. Let's see, where is it? The corner there to the top and down, and then make a big diamond shape. The circle that is enclosed within that diamond defines that black ring. So everything, without exception. And you can go further and find out why he's standing on that line and so on. Okay. Navajo sand painting. The Navajo people called themselves the Dine, which means the people. Okay. Their sand painting, I'ika'a, means literally signifies a place where gods come and go. This is a portal between the earthly realm and the divine. These are used in, it's a sacred, I wrote it all out here. Sand painting is a sacred art used in ceremonies for healing. These would be painted on the floor, and an ill person would sit in the middle of it. They would be treated, and when they left it, the sand painting would be destroyed. Okay? Once the ceremony is over, the painting is ritually destroyed in order to destroy the illness as well. So no traditional sand paintings actually endure. Okay? Okay, what do we have, 15 minutes or so? Is that right?
Well, we normally stop at an hour and then have some questions. So
All right. If I can move quickly with this, is it all right? Okay. The modern sand paintings that you can go buy in the Southwest, they sell these. You can go to Santa Fe and so forth. They have the traditional themes and styles, but there are minor substitutions, omissions, additions of figures, which switch off the beacon that summons the holy people. In other words, the artists went to the elders and said, hey, there's a lot of people who want to buy our stuff. And the elders said, no way can you sell the designs unless you alter them. You turn off the beacon. You change the colors. You move something. You change it somehow. So normally what you do in this one is a circle inscribed in the outer square. Normally would do this. And you can see how these etches, these markings come about, would touch a circle. But to understand this one, that inner circle is not concentric with that. So what I had to do is shift the circle. And I can only think this was intentional, that it was done like this. Let's take a look. So an octagon shows you, it explains why these notches are where they are. You see, that's, if you've ever seen paintings with those notches, it's due to something like this. Okay, another octagram, an octagram there, explains the line of this, there was a white line there, of this rainbow, protective rainbow, and going in further we can see, alignment with some of the elements of it, and going in a little bit further, and finally we get to why the central, the deity is where he is. Another beautiful piece. This is a detail from the Shiraz Quran from the 16th century. There are 32 of these rays coming about. So I put a circle where it seems appropriate at these little flower elements, and a octagram shows us the outer circle, and another octagram at the crossings shows us the next circle. Now the octagon, the 8 symbolism, the octagon is part square, part circle. If you take a square and give it a circular turn, it turns into an octagon, which means when you see the octagon, it says this is between heaven and earth. The divine is looking at us, the earthly are looking at us. So that's why you see it in the buildings of capitals of the United States. It says to the lawmakers, you better be careful. The people are watching you and God is watching you. I don't think they remember. Finally, the last number 12, which we have the square root of 2 and the square root of 3 proportioning. We'll end the images with this Navajo sand painting called the whirling logs, or whirling log. It's a depiction of a myth of a fellow who's running from something and he falls into a river and he's caught in a whirlpool and logs and so forth. And you can look up whirling logs online and you can see this. Now for this one, I put a square around it, and I'm going to define it as a 4x4 square. Anytime you want to understand Native American art, circle and square. Circle, square, and 8 and 12, let's say. But circle and square, heaven and earth. And the 4x4 is very commonly used. In part, it emphasizes the number 4, but the 4x4 square is unique. It's the only square whose perimeter has the same number as its area, 16. No other square will do that. And so we use this as a frame. If we inscribe a circle in that, you'll notice, by the way, the edges of the square define really how these 4 sets of corner feathers are. But what's interesting about the circle inscribed in a 4x4 square, wherever the circle crosses a line, we put a point, and that creates 12 equally spaced points around the circle. And that's where that will give us the framework for the rest of this. Okay. Now I just connected some of those points, and we see here each of the 4 deities, here's one, here's one, here's one, and here's one, are nicely defined in those rectangles. And the diameters going across, show us why these plants, the sacred tobacco plant here, why these other images are as they are. And one more square within shows us the base of the tobacco plants. And you can go further and further with this, but this is the basic framework that shows it all. Our final slide, I thought we'd end with a couple of quotations. Albrecht Dürer, in his writing Course in the Art of Measurement. And since geometry is the right foundation of all painting, I have decided to teach its rudiments and principles to all youngsters eager for art. And then finally we have Madalagika here, Romanian prince, novelist, mathematician, historian, philosopher, diplomat, Dali's geometry tutor in the Geometry of Art and Life. He wrote, "Inspiration, even passion, is indeed necessary for creative art, but the knowledge of the science of space, of the theory of proportions, far from narrowing the creative power of the artist, opens for him an infinite variety of choices within the realm of symphonic composition." And so that's my presentation, and I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you.